Hi, I'm Dr. Sharon Saline, and I'm very excited to be here for an Attitude Facebook Live. It's been a while um, due to some administrative issues and a variety of recovering from my own illness, of a winter illness. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited to be talking about loneliness in kids. Please let me know if you're here, where you're from, and what's an issue you would like me to address today. Again, welcome. I'm Dr. Sharon Saline. I'm very excited to be here again. It's been a while. And please, in the comments section, tell me your name, where you're from, and what are some issues related to loneliness that you're seeing in your children and teens. Okay, people are just joining, so I'm going to pause for a minute and see who comes on. So I'll give them one more minute. This is such an important issue right now in our world. It's more I think important than a lot of other issues that are facing teens, as loneliness can be kind of the basis and sort of behind the scenes in causing anxiety and depression, perhaps an eating disorder or substance abuse in our young people. So again, if you're joining, please put your name in the comments, where you're from, and what is an issue related to loneliness that you're seeing in your house and your family. I think I'll start with telling you about some studies recently on loneliness that have come out. They came out mostly in 2023. Harvard conducted a study on loneliness that found that both loneliness and social isolation are serious health risks. Social isolation can be linked to higher mortality rates, particularly in adulthood, and loneliness can be linked to psychological issues throughout the lifespan. In 2023, the Surgeon General did a big study on loneliness, and what he found was that young people were telling him that they're often struggling with a sense of loneliness and isolation, and they feel like some of the burdens that they're living with in their lives, they're dealing with all by themselves. They also talked about in the study that the Surgeon General conducted that technology, social media in particular, has been a mixed blessing. There are three things about social media that I read that he quoted, which was they say it often makes them feel worse about themselves, they feel worse about their friendships, and they can't seem to get off. None of these things are surprising, because social media platforms are designed to maximize how much time young people spend on them. The Surgeon General recommends that many young people are diving into social media without significant training or skills in learning how to identify a potential harmful effects of social media. So it's like giving somebody a car without teaching them how to drive. Whether it's exposure to violence or bullying or other kinds of harmful content or harassment, it can lead to sleep deprivation or other negative consequences from excessive use. And so we have to teach our children how to use social media safely. Again, if you're just joining, please put your name in the chat. Tell me where you're from and what is an issue related to isolation and loneliness that you would like me to address. The Surgeon General's advisory on loneliness is available online, and I think it's really worth checking out, particularly if you have a child who struggles with loneliness but also struggles with social anxiety. And I'm going to give you a link right now to help to a downloadable that I hope is working, on how to help your children and teens with social anxiety, which often is related to loneliness and isolation. So if you could, again, introduce yourself and bring up your questions, that would be great. Thank you, Marion. Hi. You have a 10-year-old son, a sweet boy, but having a lot of friendship challenges and navigating social situations. How can you best help him? Well, I think one of the best ways to help him is something I'm going to address in a little bit. So hang on, and I'll come back to your question. In terms of more studies about loneliness, Cigna, the health insurance company, did a survey and found that in the last few years that 50% of Americans feel alone or left out, quote, always or sometimes. Whether it's members of Generation Z, born between 1990s or the early 2000s, they had the highest score, followed by millennials, who are close behind, a little bit older. Interestingly, who had the lowest scores? People ages 72 and above. So our seniors are really struggling with loneliness. Loneliness affects physical and mental health. Working too much or too little can affect loneliness. And a lot of research suggests that more screen time and social media have caused a rise in depression and suicide among American adolescents. The study also found that people who spend less time looking at screens and more time having face-to-face social interactions are less likely to be depressive, anxious, and suicidal. Of course, that's not necessarily surprising. How people use social media can determine its influence on a person's sense of self as well as connectedness to others. If you're just scrolling feeds, there are more negative effects than if you're using it to reach out and connect to people and setting up in-person get-togethers. So we know that electronics are playing a significant role and that the nighttime usage of cell phones can also increase anxiety and depression. And in teenagers in particular, reduced sleep, disrupted sleep, can result in, this is true for younger kids too, and for adults, lower performance and, more intense struggles academically, socially, etc. So, Marion, let's sort of address your question. If you have a question about loneliness or loneliness in your family, I encourage you to put it up here in on the chat. You said that your son is having a lot of friendship challenges and difficulty navigating social situations. How can you best help him? I'm curious what types of situations are challenging for him and what you've tried that's worked. Many times friendship challenges for kids with ADHD come along with not being able to really interpret cues effectively. Also, sometimes being distracted internally or externally, usually, that shiny new penny or look, there's a squirrel, can detract kids from what's happening in the moment, and then when they check back in, other kids are less tolerant or compassionate with them. They're often frustrated and don't want to kind of help integrate them into what's happening around them. One of the ways that we can help kids make friends is really to assist them in understanding what a friend is. There are different types of people who are friends. There are our best buddies, and usually we have just a few of them. Then there are people we're close to. That's a little bit of a bigger outer circle. Then there are acquaintances. Then there are people we know by sight, but we don't actually know them particularly. And then there are strangers who have potential to be new friends as well, although we may not be as comfortable getting to know them because that requires stepping outside of our routine or what we're accustomed to and reaching out to talk to them. So many people with ADHD struggle with social anxiety, which I've talked about before. And, social anxiety is uh, is a debilitating fear of judgment, humiliation, or rejection. That and it can be fun. It's attached to a feeling of deficiency, and it can last for 6 months and restrict activities, interests, and relationships. Um, Common symptoms of social anxiety can be trouble making or keeping friends, feeling self conscious around other people, and being intensely worried about negative judgment. One of the things that happens with social anxiety is that the person believes that they know what another person is thinking about them, which just is probably not true. We don't know what other people think about them, but for people with social anxiety, they're very much wrapped up in the thoughts that they have, that they are kind of projecting onto someone else, believing that that the other person has the thoughts as well. So there's a self-consciousness. There can be panic attacks, like physical symptoms, shaking limbs, nausea, perspiration. These can all be very common. People with social anxiety can have trouble making friends or keeping friends, may avoid experiences where social interactions take place, might feel self-conscious around other people and worried about negative judgment, might be embarrassed to eat in front of others. And also this kind of uncertainty about how an event or will unfold lies at the core of this type of anxiety. What happens is that you're not sure how something's going to work out, and this is so true for our young people with ADHD. They're not sure how something's going to work out. They don't believe that they have the skills to meet a particular situation or an issue, and so these underlying core beliefs of not being good enough or being deficient are activated, which then hold them back from being able to participate in a social situation. Marion says that some of the challenges are related to reading situations and also can get emotional. We see this a lot with kids with ADHD. So one of the things that I think can be really helpful is I teach my clients to take a bite of an apple. And this is an acronym. It's not actually a thing you need to do, but it's an acronym. So how does that work? So A would be to ask relevant questions to the people around you, because we don't want to ask to join, because a lot of times other kids will just say no. But what we want to do is to be able to participate in conversations by paying attention to what's going on around us. And this is where many kids with ADHD struggle the most. So how can you do that? How can you assess what is happening by looking at people's faces? So we want to ask relevant questions and assess what's going on by looking around at the messages that people are giving us with their faces. So if someone is turning away from you when you're talking, that's one message. If someone is looking at you and nodding their head, that's a different message. And so we want to teach our kids what these messages look like and how to respond. The second letter in Apple is P, and this means physical proximity and volume. So we want to help our kids, understand that in our culture in the United States, we stand about an arm's distance apart, and we want to match the volume of the people around us rather than come in with our own volume. And so this is important. So this means pausing and and observing before you enter a room or a group or people playing on the playground, to see what's going on before you speak. And this is also challenging for kids with ADHD because they dive right in, or they might come into a group and say, "Oh, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?" rather than just listening for a minute and then maybe asking a question. So that's the second P. The third P is to participate with reflective statements that show that they're listening. And this we can definitely practice at home. So we can practice all of these things at home, and I think that's very helpful. And we can also practice it, we can watch it between sibling relationships if you have more than one child, or if somebody comes for dinner, you can assist your child in learning how to do that as well. So participating with reflective statements shows that you're listening. You're genuinely interested in someone else's experience and you're not judging them. So everybody has insecurities, whether they show them or not. And reflective statements would be, "Oh, so you really liked that? You know what? You really liked that movie. I did too. I thought it was great." So you're kind of repeating like the last part of the last phrase and then adding to it. L is to lay off self-criticism, which people do in relational situations, and listen. Turn down the volume on that negative voice that guesses what other people are saying about you because it's often wrong. And instead, be present in what's happening by listening and reflecting back what you hear. And this is a great skill to practice at home, at the dinner table, in conversations, and to be upfront about it. Like, let's figure out how we can, make conversations that are meaningful. How can we make conversations that show that we're listening? Because people want to feel listened to. And the last letter of Apple is E, which means enjoy connecting with others and sharing what's special and fun about you while receiving what's interesting and compelling about others. So we're going to start small. We don't want to, basically tell our kids to just go up to somebody they don't know and say hi and start talking to them, because that will never happen. But who is someone within their circle where they know who they could talk to? That would be really helpful, because conversations are a give and a take, and that's something that's worth explaining and practicing, because practice makes progress, particularly in learning how to make friends, but also with regards to that early chit chat that feeds into relationships and friendships. You don't have to like it, but you have to have a little bit of a skill to be able to start a conversation with someone that isn't necessarily a deep dive into a sensitive subject, but something a little bit more superficial that relates to a shared interest that you might have, which is like if you're doing if there's an activity at school and people are making puppets and you're sharing, your child might want to say, wow, I really like that, how you put the hair on your puppet, that's cool, or something like that that's related to what they're doing. Also thanking people for assisting them or helping them, asking them how they're doing. These are basic things that are really important. Marion says, I think some of the challenges is that he hasn't matured socially like his longtime friends have. Right, so we know that people with ADHD, kids with ADHD, can lag behind in maturity up to 3 years. And we see this maturity both in what's called metacognition or self-evaluation, their self-awareness, their ability to understand themselves. We also see that lag in maturity in managing intense emotions, impulses, things like that. And so that sometimes kids can really feel left out because they're not keeping up with their peers, and they feel behind, and then they feel anxious about being behind, and they can be there can be more pressure that they put on themselves. Hi Priscilla, thank you for joining. Boys can be emotionally sensitive, that they need help understanding. One friend can make a huge difference. Supposedly boys do better when they're doing something together while talking, while girls can sit and talk. So this is very interesting. I think that actually, because boys live and are raised in an action-oriented, activity-oriented world where verbal processing is less significant than it is for girls who tend to be raised in a more relational framework. So that is, I think, a fair observation that it's easier for boys to share an activity and then talk about that than it is for a lot of girls who, neurotypical girls in particular, who like to sit and chat about things. And this can be hard for girls with ADHD, and they might end up feeling like it's easier for them to be friends with neurotypical boys than with some of the girls. Or we might find kids befriending kids who are a little bit younger than they are. So one of the things that we want to think about is how to reduce stress for our children, because stress can interfere with their coping mechanisms and their ability to really reach out to make a friend or take a chance. You're right, Priscilla, in that one friend can make a huge difference. I usually say that 3 friends are what kids need: somebody to be with, somebody to be with when the first person's busy, and someone else to be with when the second person's busy. That's enough. That's enough, because otherwise there's a lot of pressure on that one friendship. But we want to help our kids understand how to be a friend. And what does it mean to be a friend? Being a friend means being caring, loyal, someone who listens and talks, not just talks, someone who's fun, someone who brings a sense of compassion or empathy. And these are all things that really lie at the heart of friendships. And so maybe some of you who are here today can put in the chat what you think children's friendships, what are some of the characteristics of children's friendships? One of the ways that we want to remember to reduce stress is that stress is a situation of too much. And so for a lot of kids who have ADHD, going to school and spending the day at school is a lot. It takes a lot of effort to focus on school, and when they come home, they're tired. And we want to remember that participating in a lot of after-school activities might help them with their interests, but it also can be more exhausting. So what is the balance between doing too much and doing just the right amount? There's also stress in social situations. We want to get clear about what that is. So what types of things are stressful for our kids in social situations? If you want to add that to the chat, that would be great. I'd love to hear what some of the things that are stressful in social situations for your kids are. Of course, one thing that we want to do is to set limits around technology and stick with them. And so making a regular time to turn off devices that will give you screen-free time before bed. Where do the devices live at night? Many young people feel like they have to have their phones all night long, even when a parent or a responsible adult is in the next room. And this is really a puzzle for parents, and it's challenging because what happens is kids feel like they need that phone. It's a connection to other people, but it also is a dependency. And so can you in your family figure out how your child can have appropriate access to devices and then scale down? Maybe the devices live in your room. Some parents I know have had a lot of trouble with this, and they've had to create lock boxes for their kids. So I think it's really worth having a conversation if you have a partner or with some close and supportive, loving family members or friends about technology and how do we use it in our family and when. Can you have a screen-free meal? If you have a screen-free meal, what about going around and saying a hi and a low from the day, or a rose and a thorn, or a happy and a crappy? All of these things can be ways to help kids learn the social skills that they need to make friends. Offer your kids alternatives to video games or television or screens or social media when their time has finished by doing something together with them. playing a board game, doing a puzzle, cooking, playing tennis, basketball, taking a walk, riding a bicycle, or perhaps going to a movie or watching a shared ritual of some series at home together. Because even when you're watching a favorite TV show together, you're often sharing and likely talking about during commercials or about what you're seeing. We want to make sure that we talk with our teens and our millennials about the fake book phenomenon. And the fake book phenomenon is that no one ever posts pictures of themselves mid-breakout or shares news that they failed an algebra test. The face-to-face connections help us see and understand what's really going on with someone. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we have to help kids slow down to read a face. What is my face showing you? And this is a great thing to do at home and practice. What is my face showing you when you say that to me? What is your sister's face showing you when you punch her in the arm? What are some of these things that can happen? Recently, I was visiting my family, and my brother was telling a story about a time when he punched me, and he was laughing about it, and I wasn't laughing because it wasn't funny to me, right? And so, because I was the person who got punched. And so we want to be able to help our kids understand that things that they might seem as funny, that could be aggressive or sarcastic, could be hurtful to other people. How do you figure that out? You figure that out by looking at the response that you're getting. Many kids with ADHD struggle with impulse control, as well as needing extra support in learning how to transition off their devices, as well as focusing on ways to both entertain themselves but be an available friend to participate. It's harder for them to figure out things to do that aren't screens, because screens are so automatically and quickly rewarding. So maybe put up a list of what you can do if other than screens. What are some things to reduce loneliness? How can we interact? Is your child involved in any sort of after-school activities that require engagement with peers? Because this is a nice, non-pressured way to make friends. For a lot of kids with ADHD, team sports can be overwhelming. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're overwhelming. If they're overwhelming, what you might want to think about are what I call individual team sports, things like swimming or fencing or tennis or track, where you're part of a team but you're also doing your own thing. Also, as kids get older, sometimes theater can be a great way to make friends, whether it's improvisational theater or being part of a play, being able to engage with people in a different element. Maybe if your child really likes to ham it up, this can be a fun way to meet other people. One of the most powerful buffers for stress is our relationships with one another. That's kind of what will help kids feel more comfortable with themselves and with others. And so we want to assist our kids in investing in social connection. And this means that we might have to initiate social connection for our children through our families. Family get-togethers are great ways for kids to be with and be with other kids, and also have the security of the family around them. I remember I had one client who was in 8th grade at one school and was transitioning back to at an independent school, and was transitioning back to the public school in his town. And we worked together with his parents to have some dinners with some people who had been his friends before he went to the independent school, or people he played sports with who went to who would be going to this public school as well, so that when school started, he had people to say hi to in the hallway or have lunch with. Christine says, we have found skating and biking to be great. I'm very glad to hear that. So this would be a great time if you have any questions or you would ask for any particular support from me on this issue of making friends. Marion says, I've seen my boy start to be antagonistic or annoying because he likes the input or response. Any suggestions for how to curb that? When he's antagonistic and annoying because he likes the response, what kind of response is he getting? And is that really the response that he wants? I would suggest he doesn't, but he doesn't know how else to get someone's attention. And so this would be a great thing to work on at home, which is how do you get attention without being antagonistic or annoying? Or if people say no, when you reach out in a kinder way and they say no, what do you do with your disappointment around that? Most kids, many kids, particularly those who struggle with impulse control, will get angry and act out. So he wants attention, and so if he is seeking attention appropriately and not getting it, how can we offer him some alternatives for attention that are different, but equally effective and appropriate, instead of annoying people, which ultimately will push them away and make things more difficult for him and in his social life particularly. I'm curious, one thing that I want to say that can get in the way with loneliness is, one thing that accompanies loneliness a lot is shame. Feeling like you're a bad person, feeling like you don't measure up, you're different. We can see this in kids apologizing a lot, holding on to past mistakes, struggling to maybe forgive other people, or continuing to approach someone who has blatantly rejected them with the hope of a different outcome. So it is helpful for us to sort of turn our kids towards people who might be better sources of friends, and to maybe talk to teachers at school about that. Notice when they're in an activity who they're hanging out with and how they're responding, and to really understand that a friendship takes time and effort, and not everyone wants to be with you all the time. Marion says, he does feel like a bad boy, which is so sad to me since I'm constantly affirming him. So I think for someone like your son, it might be helpful at dinner to do a high and a low every day. What's something that went well? What's something that you would have liked to have seen go differently? Because he could start to pay attention to these things that go well. You could even write them down. So at the end of the week, you could have a little list of all the things that went well. When kids are so hard on themselves, or they don't like themselves, or they're ashamed of who they are, we have to work harder at building up the positives in their lives. And so being able to have a running list of what I call the wall of wonderful, maybe take some Post-its and write down things that are going well, would be a great thing for him to be able to see at the end of the week, wow, this, and this went well. To add it up. Research has shown that when people can think of 3 things they've done each day that went well or were well enough, that it can shift from that negative mindset. I'm wondering if anyone has any more questions, because we're going to stop very soon. I think the solution, there is no one solution to reducing loneliness, but there are solutions to taking some risks and having a growth mindset. And that growth mindset is, I'm going to try something, I'm going to see what happens, and then if it works, I'll keep doing it, and if it doesn't, I won't. We want to start small. Maybe start by saying hi to people in the hallway at school. Maybe start by saying hi to the person whose desk is next to yours, and not expecting more than that. Maybe asking the teacher to assist in pairing your child up with someone who will meet them and is similar to them for projects so that he can start to nurture a friendship. And maybe for the teacher to throw a little fertilizer on that. We want to remember that kids with ADHD want to connect. They often struggle with how, and it's the how that we want to connect, that we want to really nurture, and we want to nurture it with that apple. So we're going to ask relevant questions, assess what's going on. We're going to participate. We're going to lay off. Whoops, I forgot. We're going to lay off the self-criticism. We're going to pay attention to our proximity and volume, and we're going to enjoy the process of getting to know someone else and getting to know ourselves. I didn't put that in the right order, so I'm happy to say it again. Ask relevant questions and assess the situation before you jump in. To talk about physical proximity and volume to match what's happening, to participate by listening, using reflective responses rather than just talking about yourself or what your interest is, to lay off self-criticism, and to enjoy engaging with other people, to bring to what you might bring to a situation and what they might bring as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really glad that you were here. Again, I will add into the chat my downloadable on helping neurodivergent children manage general and social anxiety. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.